Welcome to the Livability 2050 Regional Transportation Plan Update Public Workshop, held on October 23, 2018. During today's workshop, we'll be bringing you up to speed with some of the progress that's been made on the Regional Transportation Plan Update over the past several months and giving you some insight into our next steps. So what is Livability 2050? This is a regional transportation plan for the Memphis region. It covers all of Shelby County and a portion of Fayette County in Tennessee, and all of DeSoto County and a portion of Marshall County in Mississippi. The plan covers all travel modes, including cars, bicycles, pedestrians, transit, and freight. When completed, Livability 2050 will identify transportation improvements that can be funded through the year 2050. As a part of the initial planning effort associated with Livability 2050, we developed a series of guiding principles. These guiding principles form the bedrock of what we're doing throughout the planning process, whether that be understanding the types of projects that are needed, the different community needs, or also the funding and prioritization structure for project implementation. These principles build on information that was gathered during Livability 2040, the region's previous regional transportation plan. And they include concepts such as connections and choices, economic vitality, safety and security, sustainable growth, and system preservation. First, I'd like to provide you a timeline of where we stand within the project process and a recap on some of our recent public engagement activities. We're currently at the midpoint of our project process, in the midst of our second series of public workshops. At this project workshop series, we will have draft findings, where we introduce initial recommendations and start to explore available funding and priorities. This is the second workshop series that we've had so far in the process. Our first series of workshops was held in February of 2018, and we will have a third series of public workshops in summer 2019 to introduce the draft Regional Transportation Plan Update. Our engagement activities on the Regional Transportation Plan Update to date have included a wide range of activities. Everything from the public workshop series that had 75 different attendees, as well as a range of community groups that were engaged with through stakeholder meetings, over 300 individual commenters on our online survey and map, as well as reaching out to neighboring jurisdictions and member citizens through press releases, flyers, email, and social media. Our first public workshop series had 7 different locations with 75 attendees. Those locations were spread across the study area in a manner similar to how the second workshop series was conducted. Our stakeholder interviews covered a wide array of different agencies, some being more specifically transportation focused and others being a little bit broader, covering other topics such as economic vitality, active transportation, healthy living, and others. We intentionally engaged with this wide array of stakeholders to help make sure that we are addressing issues within the planning process that are going to be important to all of these different groups. In addition to these specific groups, we also had the opportunity to engage with our member jurisdictions within the MPO to talk in more detail about some of the needs specific to those areas and what may have changed since the development of the Livability 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. Our online survey was a success, with over 330 individual online surveys completed, as well as 30 paper surveys that mirrored the online surveys in terms of their content. These yielded over 700 map markers, individual locations where people could tell us about the issues that they had, give us more insight into which travel mode they were referring to, and leave a specific comment. In all, the survey resulted in over 3,700 unique data points, all of this being information that we're bringing to bear in the identification of recommendations and considering our priorities moving forward. When these surveys are prepared, we like to better understand the coverage, how we are reaching out across the region. And when we look at the map here, you'll see the survey count by home zip code. So we see a nice distribution across the area of folks participating in the survey, which helps us better reflect some of the needs across the entire area. On this map, you'll see individual map markers that were recorded as a part of the online survey. Each one of these is specific to a mode and has a comment associated with it. And this is all information that we've been able to draw on and build off of in the development of the recommendations that are being discussed today. When we asked members of the public to give us insight on the different types of needs, we got a range of responses that spanned all travel modes. Whether it was specific items like buffered bike lanes in certain locations, or more general items like safer crossings, we found a range of different comments that were very valuable to the process. Next, let's move on to a summary of our existing conditions. It's important as a part of our regional transportation planning process to understand the conditions that are out there in the region right now. This enables us to better update what was shown in Livability 2040 and also account for any emerging trends or needs that have come up over the past couple of years that may need to be addressed through the recommendations process. First, we start with safety. We were able to pull information from the state DOTs and local jurisdictions to help us understand vehicle crashes and their characteristics within the region for a 3-year period. Through this exercise, we were able to understand the frequency of crashes across the area and also to understand the severity of crashes. We want to look at a combination of those two items when we start to think about how best to address some of our safety locations in the region going forward. We were also able to dig into individual corridors and start to understand those locations that have high crash corridors within the region, such as US 72 in Poplar, Goodman Road in Mississippi, Winchester Road, Lamar Avenue, Elvis Presley Boulevard, Germantown Parkway, and more. One of the particular aspects of safety that we try to pay attention to is understanding the impacts to non-motorized crashes, specifically for bicyclists and pedestrians. These types of crashes are a subset of overall crash patterns, but have unique characteristics. For example, severity for bicycle and pedestrian crashes is typically significantly worse than those involving only motorized vehicles. So we look at the overall frequency year over year to see if there's been any trends of an overall increase or decrease. What we found from this analysis is we've remained relatively stable across our recent history as far as the numbers of crashes that are occurring. We do see our bicycle and pedestrian crashes being geographically dispersed across the region, and again concentrating on some of those higher volume corridors and also areas where there is a greater propensity for walking and biking. And we look at the individual severity of those things. This allows us to identify some particular locations for bike ped safety improvements, and also understanding at a regional level our performance as far as bicycle and pedestrian safety. Another area of emphasis within our process is maintenance, whether it be bridge maintenance or pavement maintenance. This is something that is being looked at the federal and state levels, being more intensively tracked, and is also of great importance here at the regional level. In fact, one of the key takeaways of the Livability 2040 plan was that there needed to be an increased emphasis and an increased funding percentage made available for maintenance in the area. As a part of the Livability 2050 public process, we revisited this question and determined that maintenance was still listed as one of the top priorities for members of the public in this region going forward. We've been able to look at this from a bridge maintenance standpoint to understand what condition our bridges are in across the area, and then also our pavement conditions. All of these things will be reported at the regional level and will continue to be a portion of how decisions are made for maintenance in the years to come. We also consider congestion as one of the key indicators to the performance of our roadway system. We're able to use the regional travel demand model, which is a tool that helps us understand what congestion looks like both now and into the future as we consider growth in our population and employment. We look at things like existing congestion, which is what you see here. Many of the key corridors leading into Memphis, as well as around Memphis, are shown as congested even in the current year. When we look out to 2050, the horizon year of this plan, we see that congestion continuing, with many of the major corridors throughout the study area exhibiting significant congestion. This will continue to be a focus as part of our needs identification and also our recommendations development process. We also have the benefit in Livability 2050 of drawing on several multimodal plans that have been recently completed or are currently ongoing in the region. Things such as the MPO's Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, completed a couple of years ago, the Greater Memphis Regional Freight Plan, very recently completed, and the ongoing Memphis 3.0 comprehensive planning effort, which contains a specific subset related to transit visioning. All of these tools help to make our multimodal elements as part of the Livability 2050 Regional Transportation Plan update more robust than ever, and we're excited to have these tools available for our use. When we consider what we've learned from our existing conditions and our needs identification, we find that several themes emerge as most important for consideration. Safety remains a priority for all modes of transportation. This was something we heard loud and clear through our public outreach process, and we see echoed in the data that's available to us. We want to focus on system connectivity. When we asked the public about their priorities, system connectivity rose to the top, along with safety and preservation. Looking at connections not only within the individual modal networks, like increased roadway connectivity or transit routing, but also connections between the different modes to make sure that folks are able to have a consistent traveling experience. Preservation is still important to the community, so emphasizing that system maintenance component of the plan is going to be important. And finally, logistics is still key. The Memphis region is unique and has a specific emphasis on freight. So understanding how we can better remove barriers to freight movement and the development that supports them will help us continue to be an economically vibrant and growing area. Next, let's talk about what we've learned for investment trade-offs. When we consider our investment trade-offs, we have to look at several different takeaways based largely on what we learned from our existing conditions and needs analysis process. First, system maintenance is going to continue to be a large percentage of our overall funding landscape. Making sure that we have sufficient funding dedicated to maintain a satisfactory level of pavement and bridge maintenance is going to be key to the success of the region's plan. We also need to think strategically about how we can fund smaller scale safety projects or bicycle and pedestrian or complete streets projects. All of these projects may be somewhat small in nature, which may mean that they don't rise to the level of typically being included as a standalone project within the regional transportation plan. However, by designating targeted funding set-asides for these types of projects, it allows us to be opportunistic and advance projects as the need arises or the funding becomes available. The region needs to continue to place a focus on strategic transit network enhancements, both to the existing network and also leveraging the vision for the future and understanding some of the larger scale improvements that may be planned going forward. And finally, we can't ignore the need for strategic roadway expansion improvements, whether those be new roadways or capacity enhancements or other enhancements to existing roadways. Emphasizing the connections to freight networks and regional centers is going to be important to make sure that we are serving the biggest needs first. As a part of the Livability 2050 Regional Transportation Plan update, we've had the opportunity to look at funding histories for the area over the past several years and start to understand what our funding landscape may look like as we look out to the 2050 horizon year. When we consider the available federal, state, and local funding sources for transportation and consider them out into the future, we estimate having a total funding level of about $11.8 billion. That's divided up over Tennessee portions, $8.5 billion, and a Mississippi portion of $3.3 billion. They'll sound like big numbers, but keep in mind that this is over the next 32 years. And this is for all transportation improvements in the area, whether they be maintenance improvements or capacity improvements. When you think about it in that area and you start to understand that costs will continue to inflate over the life of the plan, they bring them better into perspective. Let's break this down a little further. When we start to understand the split of the $11.8 billion, we look at it both over the two states and then also understanding the types of projects that we want to fund. For regional system maintenance, we anticipate needing approximately $6.9 billion available for our maintenance funds, whether that be bridges, roadways, or even transit system maintenance. The funding set-asides for things such as safety, bicycle and pedestrian standalone improvements, or even things like traffic signal timing or dynamic message signs. We're allocating approximately $1 billion for those set-asides over the life of the plan. This leaves us with approximately $3.8 billion for our regional roadway capacity enhancement projects and our transit capital projects. So this comes out to approximately 58% of our funds going to maintenance, so well over half, approximately 9% for our special project set-asides, and the remaining 32% for our roadway and transit capital projects. In order to develop our capital project recommendations, we leverage the needs identification process, existing conditions, and public outreach summaries that we discussed earlier in this public workshop process, as well as conversations with member jurisdictions and reliance on the Livability 2040 plan. With all of those different pieces of information coming together, we're able to arrive at a series of recommendations that run the gamut of different capital project types. As an example of the types of projects that will be considered, we have projects from many different types. They could be freight enhancing projects such as improvements to Lamar Avenue, transit improvements such as the bus rapid transit improvements that are being considered from downtown to the University of Memphis. We're able to address safety, whether that be through interchange or grade separation projects, or even more specialized treatments such as roundabouts. And roadway capacity projects as well, whether they be traditional widening or new location projects, or major interchange or circulation modifications. Moving forward in our process, we are excited about the next steps. Our next steps will take us into allocating our available funding to the recommended projects and starting to understand what can be funded within the life of our regional transportation plan. All of this will be put into the Regional Transportation Plan document, which will come out as a draft plan in summer of 2019. We'll have a separate set of public workshops at that time, leading up to the ultimate plan adoption in early fall of that year. We thank you for being a part of our process and invite you to visit Memphis MPO website frequently to catch up on updates of the process and learn more. Thank you.